Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babbling Irons match preview. Probably going to be a little bit less confident than our predictions against Everton a couple of weeks ago, lads. But Newcastle away, tricky fixture, and it's probably come at the worst time for us, needing points. And yeah, just St James's Park right now, terrible place to go. And how you guys feeling? Just off the bat.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up quite nicely, mate, in the fact that it's not a great place to go for us at the minute. I think they're, 2 wins in the last 5, but the rest are draws in the Premier League, that is. So they're pretty strong, obviously. That's not obviously form just at St James's, but we've beaten 2 poor teams. It's not exactly confidence boosting, really. I know some are.
Even though there was back-to-back clean sheets, maybe slightly improved performance against Derby, albeit a League One team.
Not being funny, but what is to be positive about by getting beating one of the worst teams we have played all season? And we've played some bad teams, like, let's be honest. It just doesn't give me much confidence because Everton were so poor, so poor, and Derby were tactically very naive. I don't think we can take a huge amount of pride in that. Yes, you beat what's in front of you, but it doesn't give me a huge amount of confidence because, again, there was at times where Derby created quite easily against us. So, and Everton also had so much possession and we conceded so much time and space to them. Had they any level of competence and confidence, they would have had at least a goal. So I can't sit there and say, oh, you know what? I have some really good confidence going into this Newcastle game based off the last 2 games because, in all honesty, we should have been smashing those games based on how they play. Those 2 teams played, and also the level Everton are at. It's just not anything to shout home about.
Well, let's take a look at the head-to-head between us and Newcastle this season in the Premier League. Same games played. Obviously, the position's slightly different with them 3rd and us 16th. They've got 21 more points than us, which is just crazy to me, considering if you looked at this last season at this stage, it would probably been the reverse. And they've won twice as many games as us with 10 wins. And they've only actually lost 1 game this season, and the rest have been draws. So it's not an easy game. It's really not. I think their home form has been brilliant. They haven't lost a game in the Premier League yet this season at home. They've conceded just 5 goals. If you couple that with the fact that we've only scored 4 goals away from home, does it make it a pretty impossible task for you, Sloth, or are you holding out a little bit of hope for Saturday?
I mean, the biggest slice of fortune that we've got is that they've got Gamiris out for the game. That is massive. And, it does mean that I look at their midfield and I kind of think, well, we should have a decent battle in there. But how many times against Newcastle have we conceded multiple goals? It's they're going to be right up for it. They're going to want to finish in the Champions League. They've got a younger, more kind of proactive manager. He's not afraid to make changes, and he's going to be saying to whoever goes in, look, this is your chance. As we said, they've only lost 1 game this season. I think that's against Liverpool. So for us to do anything, for us to get a point against them would be a decent result. Yeah. For us to get 3, I think I highly doubt it's going to happen. We'd have to be performing well, and as Mike said, nothing in the past 2 games has really said to me that we're going to be at the level to be pushing for these top teams and to be taking 3 points off them.
It's a completely different test, isn't it? Back to the Premier League. I've, just been in the FA Cup. It'll be a much changed team as well from that FA Cup match we just played against Derby. But what you touched on there, Sloth, about Bruno Guimaraes being out, that is a big blow for them. He is pretty integral to their team. He's kind of like, I would say, the Rice equivalent to us, if that kind of makes sense, just because of how much he does for that team and what he can do, not just defensively, but also offensively, which is probably where you wouldn't say you could compare him to Rice. But I just think for the importance of their team, it is massive that he's out.
I don't know. I think that's underplaying the quality that they have in other areas of the pitch. They've got, I mean, Aguerd's been great in the games that he's come back, but they have got a centre back who is head and shoulders performance wise in the league above him. Probably, in my opinion, I would say he's been the most consistent centre back outside of Arsenal's this season. He's been fantastic. And
if you actually look at the teams though, so if we were saying like combined starting 11 on not just on form but like quality, do you think it's very Newcastle oriented, or would you actually say it's kind of mixed? Because the players we have, I would probably lean towards it being pretty mixed.
I mean, who would you put in there from our side apart from Rice? Who would you put in that Newcastle side?
I think Aguerd would play. I think Paqueta as well in a midfield three. It would probably be Rice, Bruno, Paqueta if you're looking at quality.
I think if you're looking at quality, yes. I think if you're looking at long-term performances, but not this season. And I say this is someone who's a Paqueta fan. This season, I think we would really struggle to get players in a combined 11. I think Rice, Aguerd, as you say, and that's probably it, in my opinion. Like, they just head and shoulders above us in term. That's what they have squad wise. They have got forwards who score goals. The complete opposite to us in terms of they've got quality depth and they've got young depth. You know, Callum Wilson, injury prone, but scores goals when he plays. We've got injury prone players who we've got Ings who scores goals when he plays, but we've also got an injury prone player who doesn't really score goals and doesn't really play well a lot of the time. Yeah. We've got a young forward who's struggled in the league because of this side. They've got Isaac as their young forward who is struggled with injury, but has scored goals whenever he's played. And he looks dangerous. He looks quick. He looks like he's causing problems. I just don't see how our squad can match theirs at the moment.
In terms of, looking at it from a battle point of view or areas that we can perhaps look to come out on top, we've mentioned Bruno being out and the midfield area potentially being a place we can get some success. But I guess that also depends on the lineup, because if we play a back three, it's likely we're going to get overrun in that midfield too anyway, because they, traditionally play like a 4-3-3. So, Mike, maybe one for you. How do you see it, working in our favor if we can on Saturday? What is our plan? What do we do? Because we know what the plan will be, but there's going to be elements in the game where we need to come out on top. And I would say that midfield battle is probably one of the key aspects to us winning, or even
you're probably worth throwing up predicted 11, because I personally think we're going to go with a 3 in midfield, but I also think we're going to go for 3 at the back. So, it kind of comes down to the simple fact that we're probably going to have Antonio and Bowen up top. We're not really going to have any width bar Emerson and Soufal. And I really think that we're going to go 3 at the back because of the pace Newcastle have. Now, the dubious point is whether it's Joe Lilton moves back to centre midfield because Guimaraes is injured, or whether he remains at left wing. Because if he remains at left wing, then you're looking at probably Elliot Anderson. Yeah. And you would have to say that whilst the kid has talent, you would probably say, our midfield has probably got more quality if they don't put Joe Lilton there. I think Joe Lilton gives them a lot of pace, a lot of technical ability, and someone who can bring some goals, which he has started to do now. That's if he goes in the midfield. And he's been actually quite good defensively as well when he's played in midfield. So if they went for that midfield 3, I think it'd be a really, really big battle. I think if it's Anderson, who is obviously a very good player, you would suggest that maybe our experience in that midfield 3 would be able to exploit him and actually kind of find more pockets of space in and around him, and also to again, in an attacking sense, kind of expose maybe some of his inexperience defensively. But again, that's whether they go for Anderson in midfield over Joe Lilton and then maybe go for St. Maximin. But ultimately, I think we'll go for a back 5 or 3, depending on how you want to put it, because of the pace that they have in Almiron, in Wilson, Joe Lilton, or St. Maximin. Again, it depends on how they do that setup. But there's so much pace in that I think Moyes will instantly, his mind is, I need to absolutely pack my defence to manage any of that.
Yeah.
Obviously, Zuma we don't have an idea when he's coming back. So again, Aged is really going to have to operate quite extensively on that right hand side to help Emerson.
He's got a lot to do, isn't he? Not just on his own back, but like actually commanding and making sure we stay in that compact line and ushering other players around, almost like a captain would.
Yeah, he has to organise that defence. He has to do that. I think Ogbonna will be vocal. He is always vocal. I think Aged has leadership qualities. Ogbonna obviously has leadership qualities as well. And Aged is going to have to do a lot of work with Emerson in which to contain Almiron, who has been on brilliant form. And he's also been a lot less static than what he used to be. He used to just pass the ball and kind of wait. Now he's passing and driving into the space in those half spaces. So Aged's got a lot of work to do as to whether to kind of go with Emerson or to kind of, drop back and hold his position, maybe follow his run. Again, Wilson against Ogbonna. I just see from a defensive point of view, there's a lot of battles that we're really going to have to be on.
Yeah.
And I think, again, as I say, with Kehrer, at least it gives us a little bit of extra pace at the back, means that Ogbonna can maybe work a bit more as a sweeper. But what I would probably do is look to utilize Ogbonna a bit more as a kind of a stopper for about less of a better term, and use him that whenever Wilson drops, you just follow him. That's your role. You just follow him. If he drops the ball, you go near him and you just clatter him. Just have to kind of get in there quickly and stop him from turning. You can't allow
a risky game, though, isn't it? Ogbonna's 33, 34.
Keeping
in tabs with Wilson's going to be tough.
But ultimately, he's got to minimise the space he gives Wilson. He can't allow Wilson to turn and run at him or run at our defence because of their wingers are going to come inside and they're going to occupy both of our centre-backs. And again, we're lucky in the sense that Target is injured. So Dan Burn is going to play on that left-back role because he's not going to be as forward-thinking. Trippier is going to be very forward-thinking. So again, our right-hand side, or our left even, is going to get peppered all game.
I mean, you just made an absolute howler there with Taggart, because if any of our older viewers are on, there's going to be a mudder if if St. Maximin, if Isak or Wilson are on form and they're just sprinting, there is going to be a murder, because Ogbonna's going to really struggle. I know we've got Gued with a bit of pace, but I mean, I feel bad because he's clearly a nice guy, and the first few games we were going, we've got a player here, Kehler's performing. But he has just been absolutely eaten alive by the Premier League. And I think his performances are so full of holes that these players with pace and lightning pace will cause him absolute mayhem. He'll be thinking about this for days. If he has a bad game, I see this being a heavy scoreline.
We've looked at kind of the defensive side, right? So we look here, we've looked at kind of the defensive, what we have to do to kind of contain Newcastle and be wary of. But, what you mentioned, Mike, there, Trippier is going to be the one coming forwards. Is maybe not having someone like a Ben Rama in this team going to affect us? Because, yes, we're going to have Bowen, who's probably going to play towards more of the right-hand side, the right-hand channel. And like you mentioned, Dan Burn doesn't really drive forwards an awful lot. He'll be the one that kind of sits in. So are we kind of missing the trick there if we don't play Ben Rama out on that left?
Not really, because the way I look at it is that Bowen, I would, in a way, be happy to kind of sacrifice in which to try and occupy Burn and Botman. And they will outright physically dominate him. They will look to limit him trying to run with the ball. And if we go for the two up top, Now, Antonio has been frustrating and doing things well in equal measure, as is the way of Antonio. But what we have to look at is Shah, whilst a decent defender, could be got at, and Trippier who will bomb forward. What we arguably need to be looking at is really our centre forwards actually splitting that defence. We have to be, when we get the ball, we have to be aggressive in how we use Souček. So we need to try and make use of both Bowen and Antonio's natural compulsions to kind of drift wide. Because if Trippier is bombing forward, there's going to be ample space in behind him. Now, obviously, Longstaff is probably going to look to be doing quite a lot of lateral movements. But if Antonio is smart, he puts himself in that half space where, Shah doesn't want to go out to that side. So if Antonio can get himself out there and we can be aggressive with Souček needs to be the player that's bursting through the middle of that. And again, Bowen kind of splitting and kind of looking to push more to the right to then give Botman that question of, well, do I follow my defensive partner or do I stick with him? Obviously, Dan Burn is going to be difficult. And we can't just toss crosses in aimlessly because Dan Burn and Botman will eat them up. They're 6'5" and 6'7" each, respectively. So just tossing him crosses ain't going to work. So we really need to, if we are going to cross, we have to attack Schär and Trippier. That's where we have to attack.
Yeah.
And if we're going, obviously, down the right-hand side, obviously, pace could beat Burn. He's not always the most mobile, but he has played left wing back and left back. So we can't underestimate him just because of his size, that he's not going to have the mobility because he's comfortable in those positions. So if we get down there, our crossing has to be from the right-hand side, has to beat the first man because the first man is going to be Botman. Shah, then I would say you've probably got a 50-50 chance there as to whether you're going to get against him, or if you can put it on the back post against Trippier, I would back Antonio against Trippier in an aerial duel. But I just kind of look at it and go, it's going to be difficult to get at their back line. I think they got the lowest conceded goals in the first half of any team anyway. And it's going to be difficult for us to kind of move them around. And what we're really going to need is that midfield free, if we go for a free, that is, to really be aggressive when we get the ball. And we have to move that quickly. If we allow Newcastle to get into shape, that's it. We won't score. I genuinely think if we allow Newcastle to remain in their shape, we will not score.
In terms of that midfield, we saw against Derby that Flynn Downs, in the first half especially, was excellent at doing that, setting off the press and winning the balls higher up. Could this maybe be a game where we play someone like Downs, Rice, Paqueta, have Downs as maybe the 6, and then, we're going to have so much space that we're going to need to exploit on the counter. Then you have Rice to bring the ball forwards and, we look to hurt them in that kind of sense.
I'll give it a real quick answer. No. He won't drop Souček. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
But would you like to see it? I know he might not, but would you like to see that?
I would like to see it, but I think talking about the hypotheticals of what Moyes could do is a bit, it kind of feels redundant because we've talked about it countless times and he's still not done it. So for me, it's not being harsh, and you think it's just about that. It's one of those things that we could talk about, but I think we know in our heart of hearts, if he's gonna play a free, the free is going to remain, and he's not going to drop Souček because he's going to look at Botman, he's going to look at Dan Burn, and he's going to go, I need Souček because I need to defend set pieces, and he's not dropping Paqueta, and by no way is he ever going to drop Rice. So unless he goes to the random, I'm going to play a diamond midfield, and play 4 in midfield, 5 at the back or something, or a diamond midfield where he plays 4 at the back, I don't see Downs getting a chance in there.
No.
So
it's one of those things where I'm just kind of getting frustrated at the end of the day, and this isn't anything against, this isn't criticizing Rice as what he's done for us. It's just people are talking about unleashing him or letting him go and how Souček holds him back. But in an attacking sense, he does not offer enough. And it's not his job. It's not his fault. But people seem to be thinking, oh, if we let him off, he's going to be Yaya Toure. Well, Yaya Toure won games by himself single-handedly. He was absolutely incredible. And I'm sorry, but Rice is not that level. Rice is fantastic, breaking up play and getting stuck in, carrying the ball. But he can't score goals like Yaya Toure. And we've seen it in glimpses, but he did it consistently. Yaya Toure was a force of nature, and he's in my opinion, the best centre midfielder in probably the past decade in the Premier League, and that's saying something. Now, well, but it's one of those things where if Souček has an absolute stormer or he has an absolute stinker, then yeah, fair enough. If you want to get Flynn Downs in and sit him back and unleash Declan Rice, as we've heard how many times this season, then I'm afraid you're going to have to get a different manager, because we know that doesn't happen.
I think that's what it comes down to, isn't it? As much as we can say it and want to see it, and we want to see how it works, we're not going to see it under Moyes ultimately.
Yeah, and doubling down on Old Faithful. That's basically what it is.
Yeah,
it's the frustrating thing for me is that I look at these three players and I think they're all. Whether people will probably chastise me for this, because I've said it however many times, and people like to slate Souček, and they like to say like just nasty things. I'm not going to join in with that, but he's a blunt instrument. He does what he's good at, which is throwing himself at everything, running about, getting stuck in. He won't spray a 30-yard pass, and if he does, if it goes in, it's probably one of five.
I actually think he's better at doing that than the simple passes. Sometimes he'll do that big switch, but yeah.
But he's one of those players who he's an instrument. He's going to give you 100% effort, and that might result in him losing the ball every now and again. But with a player like that, you need to understand that if you're delivering crosses into the box, he's going to throw himself at it, and he's good enough to win those battles aerially. But if the ball's terrible into the box, he's nullified completely. And if you've got players around him who you've said, you can bomb forward and you can carry the ball, you can do this, then they need to produce and they need to score goals. So whilst I would love that to be happening, it's just not. I think Paqueta's going to have a really, really good game if he plays. And I was a massive proponent of a massive fan of his signing. I still am. I think he's a fantastic player. We've not quite seen it from him, what he can do. But I do think that this three that we've got isn't really working. And a game against Newcastle is the time where we need it to click. If the manager really, really wants to make a statement, this is the time to do it.
I think most fans will be happy just getting away from there with a point and moving into that Chelsea game with a bit more confidence. So let's see how confident we all are. It's that time, Mike. I know you love it. Score predictions. Let's start with you, Mike, this week. What are you thinking? Any glimmer of hope from you?
1-0 Newcastle, mate. Why should I try and polish a turd that is?
I think most West Ham fans would take that, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. 1-0 defeat and Moyes going would that, but he won't go. I honestly think even if we lose tomorrow, on Saturday, he will remain, and he will remain over the next two games unless we get absolutely thumped. In two of them. I think he remains until the Nottingham Forest game. And then he maybe comes under review if he doesn't get 3 points there. But I think these 3 games are free hits for him, and they'll do the Bilic cycle. I just genuinely feel we're back in that Bilic cycle where no matter what, you've got this many points. Oh, don't worry, you've lost. You didn't hit those points, but you at least got a win in there. So we'll allow it for another 3 or 4 games.
If we were on 22 points or something, I'd be like, fair enough, but we're not. Like, we're just right outside that kind of relegation zone. And I think the teams around us have strengthened. I think we're going to get thumped, to be honest with you. I think it could be 3 or 4-0. I would be really surprised if we score. And as I said, I think if they're wide men turn up, and if their strikers have a good day, I think it could get ugly. So I mean, I'm gonna be somewhat conservative, and I'm gonna say 3-0. But I think that if we score, the next video we do, I'll wear. I don't
Clip
know.
this.
No, I just think that it was just think if we were being honest, Newcastle can mix up their game far more than us. They can play direct, they can play on the ground, and they're brilliant at playing for the second ball. Their team is just built to manage that, and they're able to nullify teams on the counter because they've got great athleticism throughout their team.
They just look like a much better coached team than us right now, and the players know exactly what they need to do.
Coached.
Yeah,
it's not hard.
Yeah,
our team is managed. I don't believe it's coached.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's tough. You know, St James's Park, probably the toughest away ground to go to right now in the league. Our away form is atrocious. We've scored 4 goals all season away from home. They've only conceded 5 goals. So for that reason, I'm going 1-1. I'm going to stay positive, and we're going to get a point.
And everyone, please do follow Frankie for more inspirational and uplifting tweets and quotes. Follow me and Sloth for just more depressing views.
But yeah, I mean,
at the moment, I think my Twitter page's constant theme should just be that picture of the cat hanging on the rope. Like, I just hang in there because it's very little positivity at the moment.
Well, we're pretty much going to be that picture on Saturday, hanging onto the ropes, just trying to nick something. And Moyes as well, hanging on to his job. So we'll see how we do. Newcastle away, going to be a very tough fixture. But, you know, we've got to try and remain a little bit positive and see if we can take anything from the game. And, yeah, that's been our preview. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, like the video. And lads, until next time, come on you Irons.